thanks for tuning in. Before we start the show, we have an announcement to make. We got gear for you.
Yeah, due to popular demand, we've got some proper nice T-shirts with our famous logo on the front. We've even got 2 style of caps. We've got the trucker cap and the best-selling lazy slouch adjustable cap. And more importantly, we've got a beer mug, a whiskey glass, and a coffee mug to go. So you can be listening to our podcast no matter what you're doing, whether you're having a cigar at night or you're on your way to work. So you can pick up whatever you like there. Mike, where can they find it?
All you got to do is go to freakstrength.com/shop, freakstrength.com, click on the shop. Once you click on shop, pictures are going to show up of our merchandise. Click those pictures right there. There you have it. Mike and Brooker Show merchandise right there. Scroll right down. Order whatever you can to support the show. Show everyone that you are avid listeners of the Mike and Brooker Show.
Yeah, show yourself as an original disciple of the show. And guys, we just want to thank you once again for all the love and support. It means the world to us. But in order for us to keep doing this, we need to keep receiving feedback. So no matter what it is, good, bad, or ugly, we're open to everything. We want to keep delivering the best information possible. So thanks once again for all the love, and we hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, bro.
All right, and we are rolling. All right, so I am super excited right now. We have my friend Harpreet, the CEO of the U.S. aspect of Oura, or of the whole company?
No, whole company.
So of Oura Ring. So you guys all heard me. I've been posting about Oura Ring for, I don't know, a year and a half now. The thing doesn't come off me. I have all my major clients on it. And how I got hooked up with Oura Ring was I pretty much just kept emailing them and name dropping all my clients and being a total whore until they put me in touch with someone. And then finally, like, man, this guy keeps saying all these names. Like, all right, let's just put him in touch with the CEO.
Well, and you're from Jersey, so that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, you're from Bridgewater, right?
Yeah, Bridgewater. 30 minutes. Yeah, we're I grew up 30 minutes away from where you are. Yeah, well, probably longer, 45. But.
Yeah. So, I mean, and then I think I had some Michigan guys at the time. You went to Michigan. So things, and then we ended up meeting up in Hoboken. We went to, I think, Biggie's.
We did Biggie's, yeah.
Went to Biggie's, and met up there, and it was awesome. And then I ended up syncing them up with Kevin Love, and I mean, shit, the rest is history. Like things are pretty good right now.
The rest is history, as they say. Yeah. Do you remember that day though? There was a fire hydrant or some leak, and so it was like I got off the subway, right, the path, and like it was impossible to get to you because like half the streets were shut down to the way you walk there.
Yeah,
it was like a crazy day.
Welcome to fucking Hoboken. So
thanks for having me on, by the way. Love you guys, love what you're doing. I think how deep you've gone into the science, everything you put out there on the email list, on the podcast is just class, right? And so, frankly, it's like people like you that gave me a little bit of like athletic hope in my life. It was like, I felt like I had to work twice as hard, to be half as good, but frankly, because of people like you, that was possible, right? And so I wish, all the information that's out there for the generations now to learn and listen from as they keep improving on their game, their training, whatever part they're in, right? Coaching, training, player, whatever it is. It's so important, man. That's how we all get better as people.
Yeah, right on, dude. Appreciate that.
Yeah, bro.
So we're guys, this is going to be a quick podcast. As you can imagine, a CEO of an insanely quickly growing company like this company is exploding right now because it's all in the headlines right now. So we're going to get right to it. So let's talk first about the science of the ring. Okay. I don't understand how half these metrics are taken, and it's all just from, I mean, it looks like there's just 3 little sensors in this thing. How is it going about doing this? I don't understand.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and honestly, it gets back to like why it's a ring. So all these wearables, right, whether it's Apple, Fitbit, Whoop, Garmin, Oura, we all basically shine light, right? So we shine light on some part of your body, right? And for us, it's the finger. For other devices, the wrist. There's some even stuff that goes in headphones now that people are coming out with. And we see a heart rate signal, right? And based on its signal and some other sensors that we have in there for Oura, its temperature, its motion, for most of the wearables, you have motion too, right? There's, all different types of things you can put in there, like even Apple has the EKG sensor, right? We see additional data, but the primary one is really heart rate. And the way it works is, those two little bumps on the outside, if you're looking at the ring, so like, on the left and right, those are infrared LEDs. That's the light we use. We're shining that light at 250 hertz, which means 250 times a second. And we get to see a pretty clear picture of your pulse waveform. The sensor in the middle is the detector. So think of it like a radar gun. This is shooting light, bounces off your finger 250 times a second, comes back to the sensor in the middle. And we then recreate a shape of your pulse waveform. That pulse waveform has a lot of data. We get heart rate from that. We get heart rate variability from that. We get respiratory rate from that. Alongside that, we have an accelerometer and gyroscope, the motion sensors that you can't see, but they're in there in the ring. I wish there was an easy way to see it. And then, for something like sleep, for example, or anything, what we do is we go to what is the gold standard? And then we look at how our data compares against the gold standard, and we create an algorithm. And that's what like every wearable company does, basically. So sleep, we'll slap you on, we'll slap Brooker on, right? We'll go ahead and put you in a sleep lab, have you wear all 32 wires wired up to your head, your nose, right? And then we have all the raw signals that are coming off this sucker. And then we compare the two. And, we do that with hundreds, if not thousands of people for all different types of stuff that we're measuring. And that's how we create an algorithm. So that sleep, imagine you're doing it for heart rate while you're working out. What's the gold standard? Probably a chest strap. Strap someone on with a chest strap, strap them on with an Oura Ring or any other device. An Apple Watch, they did that with probably over 10,000 people, if I had to guess. And then they compare, hey, can we create an algorithm off this data? That's how sort of all this stuff works.
Okay. So what makes the Oura Ring superior to, let's say, a Fitbit or the Apple Watch? So I personally, I'm not going to wear a wristwatch. When I'm sleeping, I prefer the Oura Ring strictly for that reason alone. And it's tough enough for me to wear something while I'm sleeping. Like I'm all over the place. But what makes your algorithm or your data collection method better than another company's?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we're trying to keep doing more science to keep proving that, get it published, right? As Brooker finishes his beer. I'm so jealous, man. So for us at Oura, what really I would say it's the form factor of the ring, right? So, if I told you, Mike, you take your pulse, where would you take it? Probably take it on your neck. Maybe you take it on the inside of your wrist, right? As you know better than me, those are arteries. A lot of blood flow. You can get a nice meaty signal, right? And so what's interesting about the human body is those arteries on the inside of your wrist have a much stronger pulse signal than the veins on this side, right? There's lots of like muscle, tissue, fat, a lot of hair in my case, dark skin. But on the inside of your wrist, right, what's cool is those arteries that have all that blood flow you can feel, right, go into the palm of your hand, right? In the palm of your hand, skin is thin as hell, right? That blood, those same arteries are very close to the surface. And that signal, like I was an electrical engineer in college, I was not good enough at sports, but ended up being a huge nerd. But, if you looked at that signal and you hooked up, hey, the different tools that we have in the labs to figure out how strong that signal is, you'd see that pulse signal is about 100 times stronger than the pulse signal off the vein of your wrist. And what that means is now that signal is stronger. It doesn't mean we're 100 times more accurate. What it means is, hey, that base signal, the shape of that, how fast we can, pull the signal ends up leading to better quality algorithms from a better source of data. So for example, we can sample at 250 hertz, 250 times a second, because the signal is 100 times stronger. So we don't need that much power to do it. If you're trying to sample at 250 hertz on your wrist, like an Apple Watch only does, I think, 50 to 60 hertz in research mode, right? And that thing would die, in 6 hours, I think, on a workout mode. It'll die in 6 hours in a workout mode. If you probably did that at 250 hertz, you'd die in an hour or two. But because the pulse signal is so strong on the arteries on your finger, we can sample so much faster, so much longer than anything on the wrist. And so that's really like the foundation of what we think really helps differentiate us when it comes to our accuracy, the metrics we can track, these different health applications.
So another thing that I am quasi concerned about is EMF, right? So the Apple Watch is going to give off way more EMF than the Oura Ring would, I'd assume. How do you combat, if you're one of those guys that just wants to stay away from any kind of electronics, how do you combat that with either the Ring or even the watch? Like what are you guys doing? What measures are you taking for that?
Man, yeah, I would say a bunch, but let me ask you, do you remember anything from like physics classes, stuff like that?
Sure.
So energy can neither be created nor destroyed, right? Mm-hmm. Just sort of used. So Apple Watch, how long do you think that battery lasts?
Couldn't tell you. I don't own any Apple products.
It lasts like a day, right? If you took the teardowns of the electronic diagrams that are out there on the internet, from iFix and these people that put it out and take this stuff apart, like in Australia first, that's when all these products release there in time zone. You would see the Apple Watch has, I think, like a 295 milliamp battery. That's the size of that battery. That battery lasts about a day. Now, they got all types of stuff going on, right? They got a big display. They got it hooked up to your Wi-Fi, some of them your cellular, and they're pulling your heart rate data sometimes too, right? So you have 300 milliamps that in one day needs to be recharged. The Oura Ring, the battery is 15 milliamps, 1.5, right? So it's 1/20th the size of the Apple Watch. And I think Samsung, their Galaxy 3 teardowns came out. I still happen to read this crap. So that was about like a 200, I think it was like a 260 to 280 milliamp battery. So same size as Apple. So because that pulse is stronger, we're actually just using a lot less energy. So that's the first thing. Energy isn't created or destroyed. Now let's talk about how that's transmitted. That can have negative consequences. So one, we use infrared light. We don't use any green light. Green light definitely is distracting at night. Everything we can find about infrared light would suggest that it's actually beneficial to your health. And then I would say the last thing, so smaller battery, way better pulse signal, so we need less power. Second thing is, the color of the light we used has been shown to be beneficial to health, not harmful. Doesn't wake you up in the night, to say the least. And, the third thing is really we have this airplane free, EMF free mode where you can actually put the Ring on airplane mode. Now it still is capturing the data from just really that infrared light. That's where all the power is going. And we'll store that data. It's a couple weeks now if you never even sync it to your phone. So I think it's like up to 3 weeks. I don't know. I don't know many people that test that, but probably, you could keep it in that, antenna, Bluetooth antenna mode off, airplane mode on, right? For forever, theoretically, if you kept just once every week or 2, 3 weeks, sync it with your phone. You could turn it on for 30 seconds, let it sync all the data. So those are the 3 things we've done to fight EMF. I don't know. Hopefully that helps answer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I already knew the answer to that question because I've researched. So just so everyone's on the same page, I am a nut job when it comes to having to know about certain products before I recommend them, before I dive into them. And I have to do absolutely all the research I possibly can to learn about the people doing it and everything before I can even recommend it to a guy like Kevin Love. You know what I mean? This is my livelihood and I'm attaching it to someone else. So in order for my guys to do that, I need to know that it's ironclad. So I know that this is by far a superior product that to the Apple Watch, to the Fitbit. Otherwise, I wouldn't be recommending it to anyone. Right. That's and just so everyone's on the same page, I've probably maybe 50 or 75 of my friends, family, clients have bought this, some at a discount, some without. I haven't made any money off this product. Just so everyone knows, I haven't collected any money from this product. I recommend this product to all my people, because I think it's a very, very good product, and Harpreet's doing a really good job marketing it, running the company, doing everything the right way. It's a quality company. So that's me vouching for you guys. I really appreciate all the stuff that you guys do to make a really good product.
Man, I appreciate that. And, frankly, it's not me just doing it. It's the whole team, right? So we would not be here if it weren't for everyone. But and frankly, people like you, and that goes into a lot of risk for you to use a product, suggest it to others. That's, like you said, how you make your livelihood. So I know when we met, that's what, like, I love the people who are digging in and doing the homework, right? Because to me, that's like the approach we took. And, we felt like these health sensing applications are going to be the most important stuff in wearables. Right now, Apple is selling 35 million units a year. They'll probably sell 50 this year, right? Most of that is text message from your watch, from your phone. Like like it ties in, I do think the turn by turn navigation stuff is nice, but to us, it was really health. And if we want to focus on health for a wearable, we wanted to focus on the accuracy and the signal quality first. And, when the team gets so excited when they realize people like you have done all that research too. So, and yeah, man, I swear I'll make it up to you some way. Like, I'll either come and become like your worst client that'll have the worst 40 times in mobility. But really appreciate you diving in, man, and doing the homework.
So, Harpreet, is the Oura Ring, are you looking at just providing the diagnostic data, or are you also like giving recommendations on how to improve it? Because I mean, of course, some people are going to be shocked to learn that they're getting such little good quality sleep, for example, and different stuff like this. Are you also providing sort of information on how to improve this as well, or are you just solely giving people data?
Yeah. It's a really good question. And Brooker, man, like, I think one of the hardest things to do in the wearable industry. So we do give information and we give guidance in the app today, but, I would say it's pretty light. Like, we try not to be like overt of like, oh, you're drinking, Harpreet, you're drinking that coffee and it's, 1:30 in the East Coast, or Brooker, you drinking that beer and it's whatever time in, fairy tale land, Mykonos, right? Like, whatever it may be, right? What we have tried to do is present the data, give you a little bit of light feedback, and sort of what we call in the company, look within. So what happens is you open your app every day and you get 3 scores. You get a readiness score, you get a sleep score, and you get an activity score. And in the beginning of the day, we focus on the readiness. And that looks at your really like a bunch of different things, but your 2-week average of your sleep and your activity, how balanced they are. How hard is Mike pushing me in the gym versus, am I able to get out of, my job and get some sleep tonight and recover, right? Like, what am I ready to do? So we look at that balance. We look at the last night of activity and the last night of sleep. But then we added a couple other things. We look at your absolute resting heart rate, what it is relative to normal. We look at your respiratory rate. We look at changes in your temperature, and we look at your HRV. And then we just try to give you some generic guidance in the morning. Like, literally, your message might be tonight, hey, Brooker, your heart rate looks higher than normal. Maybe, maybe today is a day you could take it a little bit easier, or maybe you had a late meal, right? Or alcohol that caused that. We'll try to give you clues. What we have found from behavior change is actually, if I'm Brooker and I open that app and I read it, then I'm like, wait, crap, what did I do yesterday? Right? Did actually Mike put me through? I'll give you an example, real life example, right? Always gets personal. Man, it's been bananas lately, and at the company, good, busy, and I'm on the road on lockdown. Had to come back see my parents. Mike knows this, but my dad had pretty bad stroke last year, so I've been trying to spend more time with them. So I don't have the gym here. I got some kettlebells, in the car with me, and that's what made it across the country. But I haven't worked out probably for like a week and a half. I think it's probably 2 weeks. And I got out there on Sunday, and I did a good 40-minute kick my ass. My heart rate was jacked, right, compared to what it normally is. But when I saw that score in the morning, I'd say, oh yeah, what did I do? And then I start to remember, oh man, okay, yeah. The less I work out, the more out of shape I get, the worse my recovery is going to be, right? And whether it's you saying, hey, no, I actually was living it up, for finally getting some freedom, during lockdown, and got to a place to relax. I had a couple drinks. I see that. I'm not yelling at you. What we're trying to do to get you in the morning is look within, because when you start to understand your own body and how your body reacts, that's when you start to make better changes, right? So like, I started to realize for me, like, it may sound wussy, but there's like a bike back there, that looks like a Peloton. It's a knockoff. Couldn't get a Peloton in time. But hey, man, if I'm using one of those 20 minutes a day, every 2 to 3 days every three to 2 days, like my HRV is in check. I get a little bit of cardio in. I can fit it in. I react positively then when I go to doing heavier stuff like, compound lifts, right? But if I don't do that, my HRV starts to tank. And I realized that it wasn't that the Oura Ring said, hey, you lazy fat bastard, get on the Peloton today, right? It was like, because now I realize how my body works. So we have really tried to focus on not like giving you the exact thing that caused it. We don't want to penalize you, but we want you to realize it yourself. Now, we're going to keep doing a better job at it. Like my mom and dad now finally wear an Oura Ring. Man, that took years. But like, they may not be, like your audience is, really in tune with, hey, no, man, I did compound lifts yesterday and box jumps and, and then I had to do like a Tabata protocol because, Mike's like really giving it to me lately. I haven't been in here 2 weeks and he's handing it to me. You might realize, oh, that's too, my mom, God bless her, I love my mom. But like wouldn't know, hey, that's what caused my heart rate to do whatever, or my HRV to do whatever. So we need to make it easier for the mass consumers as we keep growing. But I would say right now we present it in a way that causes people to really look within and understand, hey, what did I do yesterday, and make a better decision.
That's super interesting, and it must be such a fine line that you have to take, because people can so easily suggest, like a lot of people are suggestible and can be so easily influenced. So I mean, one of the things that I've heard different athletes say is when they see sometimes their readiness score and it's low, but it's a game day, they say, well, fuck, I mean, I don't want to know this because I've got to perform today. You know what I mean? Yeah. So trying to get, I like this idea of looking within to try to understand the pattern as to why they're in the current situation that they're in for meaningful behavioral change, but to do that without negatively, or let's say planting the seed that the future is going to be slightly negative because of a score. It must be quite interesting to try and find that balance. You know what I mean?
It's hard. Yeah. I mean, well, you guys do it every day. How do you guys deal with it with your clients, right? Like, they're trying to figure out the same thing. Like, hey man, I don't feel like my best. I'm about to go into, game 4 on the road of the playoffs, right? Like I'm curious, like, how do you guys handle that with folks you work with?
It depends really on the type of personality we've got to deal with. Sometimes you gotta sort of know the language that can go deep into them, that sort of brings this sort of warrior spirit out of them. Sometimes you have to give them a bit of a kick, or sometimes you have to go back into more their sort of goals and values from my side and try to, sort of waft the fire to sort of bring it up. So, and a lot of the times also it doesn't matter, right? Their score, it's just, there's been examples that they've been able to perform very well in spite of lack of sleep, or they've been sick, or they haven't been able to keep their diet, but they've still performed very well. So there's every opportunity why this moment can also be the time where you have the best performance of your lifetime, even though, the immediate past wasn't what you perceive as optimal. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, totally. I think it makes a ton of sense. Mike, how have you dealt with it? Like when you work with people?
Well, so there's, again, personalities will absolutely play a huge role in this, but also when it comes to HRV and readiness, yeah, it's good for a systemic measure, but not necessarily an acute. So you can have a bad HRV score, right? And you could actually have a really shitty, you could feel terrible. Well, all I do is I just give you an extended warm up, and all of a sudden, maybe we'll, instead of spending 15 minutes getting the heart rate elevated, maybe we'll spend 25, and then maybe we'll add in some extra stimulus. So maybe, you're going to be a little bit more fatigued, but it doesn't mean that your readiness cannot get to where we need it to be. It just means all it is more and more information for me to be able to do my job more effectively. So whether it's a massage, whether it's we do meditation, whatever the hell it is, whatever works for that person. I know there are days where, Kevin's a big mental health guy. There are days where he wakes up and his readiness score isn't great. He didn't get much deep sleep. And then all of a sudden his depression hits him and he's the zombie and it's bad. And then we end up spending 2 to 3 hours getting him back to where he needs to be, right? That's an extreme example, but it all plays a part into how we're going to progress it for the next week. And sleep, the tracking of the sleep was paramount for us to do that. I mean, when we first started training together, he was getting 4 minutes of deep sleep, sleep, period. That was it. And he was getting like maybe 40 minutes of REM. So I've said it before, like, no wonder the poor dude had mental health issues. So getting the ring, it's accountability. So whether it gives us objective measurements of the fuckery that they are doing to themselves when I am not watching them. You know what I mean? So what you mentioned, the drinks and the late night eating. I cut out. Kevin loves wine. He used to have 2-3 glasses, and he's a big guy. He could handle it. 2-3 glasses of wine. He wouldn't be drunk before bed. Well, I cut that out, and all of a sudden his deep sleep score and his heart rate improved.
Yeah.
Resting heart rate. Just those little things. I said, all right, we switched meals. That little. So we use the data to objectively modify. It's just a way for us to keep people honest. And Brooker's way better at communicating with guys than I am. As you could tell, I'm a little bit more staccato than he is, to politely put it. But yeah, it's valuable information that we just need to figure out a way to relay to our guys to be like, hey, make the friggin' adjustment.
Yeah, I had a baseball, a baseball coach yesterday, I think, Monday. I was talking to him, and he was like, if Mickey Mantle had one of these things, his data would have been absolutely freaking awful, right? And I said, and I was like, look, like, there, I believe a lot in the mosaic theory. Like, you can still be a top 0.0001% percenter, right, at your sport and have crappy data, right? Have shitty HRV, drink booze, whatever you want to do, right? Eat late, smoke, whatever it is, right? But I was like, if Mickey Mantle had this, would he actually been a better Mickey Mantle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, doesn't mean that, he doesn't see, if he could see that, he could be even better potentially, right? So I think it's like your first thing. I forget who said it to me when I started like trying to work out and lift weights. It was like, check your ego at the door. Like, man, it doesn't matter if you can bench, 95 or 195. Either way, it's about the self-improvement, right? And it's about that practice, right? How do you get better? And I agree, man. There's days, my worst days for HRV data, tend to be when I have board meetings, right? A lot of pressure for me, right? It's the equivalent. I don't know if it's the equivalent of a game.
Is it
right?
anticipatory poor HRV, or is it post board meetings?
Pre-anticipatory. There's actually a relief after, which is so funny. And even when things are going well, but it's just like, hey, got to provide an update to the people that govern the company and how it acts, right? And so like I it's a lot of work to get everything together. You want to make sure everyone's happy. Just like if you're about to go in a playoff game, right? It's so crazy to see the body react to stress. Sometimes we think that like, oh, physical stress, dietary stress, whatever might be the worst thing, right? If I do like, if I crush it and do a bunch of 5x5 heavy, really stimulating my ANS system, right? Like that's going to crush my HRV. And to think that like, oh no, just a meeting can have as negative an anticipatory or even post reaction to a meeting can be that bad. So it's cool to see that how it translates. But no, man, we've always thought it's just about where you are and how to improve yourself. It's not about
Sure.
like if you're shitty before game days, I still think I perform at board meetings. Maybe some of my shittiest nights of data, but I meditate. I started realizing that meditate, about 30-40 minutes before. I'll make sure I get another 5 minutes, and again after do a little bit when I wake up, then again. Helps me a ton. Just like you were talking about with Caleb, right? Making sure that, hey, if you're feeling that way, what can I do to get better in the moment? It doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It just means about, hey, let's get better from where we are.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so Harpreet, obviously you have a very good and successful product right now. Are you also looking to implement more diagnostic measurements within it? Or are you is the product, is it more or less done?
No, it's definitely not done. That would make, I think, our team at some point happy. But also I think, no, there's a lot more we can do. Right now we focused on sleep and recovery, and HRV. I think health, we sort of think about health with 4 pillars, right? It's yes, it's your sleep, perhaps the most important. right, has a huge impact, probably the single biggest impact on how you perform the next day, physically, emotionally, cognitively. But there's activity, right? There's mental health, right? We have a meditation feature now. We just added some more content to that last week, Monday, in our new app release. So you can actually tune in and see, hey, listen to a meditation session. You can track your HRV and see it after and see how I improve. You could even do it in the sauna, like Mike does. Maybe when he gets it so hot, the HRV gets worse. I don't know. But I think, nutrition is probably the last one, right? So I think, more and more we'll keep working on more of those features to develop that into part of our product. Health diagnostics is perhaps the most interesting, right? Like some of these things like AFib, blood pressure, apnea. We just started now with, the stuff at UCSF and West Virginia University, with studies there, related around the onset of illness and, for this year, COVID, right, with this pandemic. And I know Mike you got absolutely annihilated with the flu earlier this year. I don't know if you ever found out what it was, but.
No, I never got tested for it. Never got tested. But that was so prior to the huge study going out with Oura Ring and COVID. I remember I reached out and I sent you guys a screenshot of the bullshit that I went through. I mean, my respiratory rate was through the roof. My body temperature was through the roof. My resting heart rate went up 50%.
That's insane.
Wow.
50% it went. And my resting heart rate, like my minimum is usually around like 50 to 55, depending on what kind of night I had. It was at 79.
Wow.
79. That's how high it got. It was brutal, but I'm tracking it, the objectivity. Like I didn't realize how messed. And what was really cool was the preface. The night before I got sick, I had a decrease in body temperature. So I had an over 1 degree decrease in body temperature. Normally it'll fluctuate half a degree, up and down. A full degree, and then I think it was like maybe 1.2 degrees below normal body temperature. So it's like, holy shit, this is you. I mean, you could see stimulation, then the adaptation, and then what the hell happened?
Yep.
It was perfect. It was so cool, so awesome.
Yeah. And by the way, we've seen that, because we have temperature and obviously, HRV, heart rate, right? We see, and respiratory rate, we see all that, a lot of different things, but temperature in particular, it's so cool. And that's something you see in the finger that you don't see in the wrist. I'm sure others are working on it now, but like you see these destabilizations sort of happening, like almost these micro changes before the fever, like you said, Mike, as you beautifully said, like, sort of stimulus before that adaptation. So it's pretty damn cool to see that, and hopefully we can help, during a pandemic.
Harpreet, mate, how many people are using the Oura Ring right now?
We haven't, the last number we said is over 150,000 people have Oura Rings.
That's it.
But we haven't updated that in a bit. So it's more, but we haven't said how much more.
Oh, okay. Right on.
And then based on those 150,000 people, I mean, obviously they're syncing up onto the cloud and stuff like that. What do you do with that data? I mean, do you run some different algorithms off that? Are you trying to look at pattern recognition with certain things? Are you playing with that data, or is that sort of private? You can't look at it and then that's it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're GDPR compliant. So that's like the European standard for data privacy and HIPAA. And I'd argue it's like way more strict than the stuff in the US, which I'm not saying, it sometimes is hard. A lot of work we got to put in. So we can't look, Alex, Brooker, I can't look at your data and be like, oh, this is Brooker's heart rate. He must have had a couple beers last night. I can look at that data de-identified, in the aggregate. So we don't know whose data is who. What we know is, hey, this guy who's 30 years old, right? All of a sudden, like we've seen a heart rate jack up, right? And so we see this interesting population health level data trends. Right now during the flu, pretty interesting to see that. Hey, what were people doing? Fitbit put out a paper, I think from data collected 2 years ago, just on heart rate in the flu. And, you can see very interesting things. We even see that in different parts of the world, depending on weather patterns. So summers, people really, tend to actually be outside more, be more relaxed, or heart rate's down. Or when people travel on vacation, get some of the best nights of sleep and HRV and heart rate that you've seen. So we do see we see all the data in aggregate. We don't get to see anyone's personal data associated with their name. But what we have done now is partner with researchers, right? So like UCSF, people have opted into a research study. And now that research institution, as part of that study, is allowed to ask questions. So, right now, the study ongoing UCSF is doing is called TemPredict. Can temperature predict the onset of micro changes in temperature, like Mike was sort of talking about his own personal experience? Can that and other physiological changes, can we see that before the onset of symptoms? So researchers, we wanted to make this data available for them to do that research in a way that works with research protocols. So we're not violating anyone's personal data. But we do see really interesting things in the aggregate. You're going to see us do more to like, hey, can we make sure that was a beer and not, something else, right? And then over time, we can get smarter and be like, hey, man, like, did you know, Brooker, the nights that you drink beer, your heart rate is 20% higher than normal? So we want to be able to start getting those stats out to people and collecting a little bit more of that. But right now, we've been pretty cautious on how we look at that data. We want to do it all with researchers first.
Sure.
So when it comes to privacy, I mean, now there's elite level athletes utilizing this. How do you, so one of the benefits of this is, I don't know if this is available to people, but because Harpreet's a dude, he gave me access to my clients that would give me their information. So they had to give me the approval. They sent the confirmation email and say, so I can track Kevin's sleep from when he's in Cleveland or when he's in, San Francisco, whatever the hell he's doing, I can track his sleep. It gets synced up to my phone as long as he gives me permission. What are you guys doing to genuinely keep that anonymous? Like, I don't understand. How does that work?
Yeah, no. So it's a really, really good question. And man, figuring this out with the NBA PA, players, agents, players, making sure everyone's comfortable with this was a really hard thing to do. So Mike, you're right. Actually, anyone today can sign up for what we have on the web called Oura Teams, right? So you can set up an account. You get, once you get approved, which we give access to everyone unless we think they're doing something nefarious, right? You can then create a group and add people to your group, and you can share your data. Now you have to consent in, like you said, Kevin or whoever got an email saying, hey, this is Mike G's group. I'm, consenting according to GDPR law for Mike to be able to see my data, right? Now, Oura still doesn't see that. We may know that, hey, some user ID is belonging to this group, but we have no idea who they are, right? Now, as you can imagine if like this data was misused, right? So imagine if you're like, let's go to that baseball analogy, right? And, you're Mickey Mantle's S&C coach, right? And his head coach. And you're like, well, shit, man, Mickey looks like his heart rate data was jacked last night. And looks like he didn't go to bed till 3 a.m., and we had a noon game. Man, I bet Mickey broke curfew and was out drinking. Just making this up, right? The last thing a player would want or an agent would want, right? And frankly, nor do I think should they, for all the reasons we talked about before. It's like, hey, I'm not going to start Mickey. I'm not going to put him in starting rotation. We'll see how the game is, see where I want to get him in the batting order later on, ain't going to happen. And that would affect the players' playing time, their contract, all types of crap, right? And so we figured out, actually, Mike, to make a special version of essentially where we actually, one, don't send any data to anyone on the team. Sorry, I know my internet's tweaking out a bit right now.
No, you're good. You're good.
Video. Okay. So what we created is this thing called a risk score. And what we took was 4 variables that go in that risk score. It's heart rate variability, respiratory rate, and temperature. And we made another score just like we have in our app, 0 to 100. And what we did with the NBA and NBA PA is, hey, they have a dashboard in Orlando, right, of everyone that's agreed to give consent. They had to consent in still. That they just see this value of how likely are they getting sick according to these 4 physiological metrics. They don't get to see the heart rate. They don't get to see the change in temperature. They don't get to see the respiratory rate. They definitely do not see any sleep data. But all they see is the score of 0 to 100. And, let's say I had a sore throat, the other day. It was scary as hell. With COVID, I'm like, man, should I get tested? But, and I eventually did and was negative. But, you would see that, oh man, Harpreet's risk score is going up that day, and if I worked on a pro team, what would happen in this case is the NBA sees that data for all staff, players, vendors in Orlando. They then they call up the actual, medical doctor on that team. And they just say, you know what, you should check in with Harpreet today. We think his data is a little high. Ask him what's going on. And then, that's it. They don't tell the doctor the score. They don't say, hey, actually, it looks like his heart rate was jacked because he was out drinking and broke curfew. They don't see any of that data. They just have this one number, 0 to 100. And the way the NBA is using it is, let's say, because they're doing daily testing, but there's going to be false negatives. Unfortunately, we know from medical data, some of the false negatives, depending on the test vendor, could be as high as 20, 30%, which is nuts, right? So if we see a false negative, but all of a sudden this dude's data is spiking, man, we should get him a second test. That would probably be the worst case scenario. You test the guy twice, right, or gal, just to make sure, they're really, really negative and don't have COVID. So that's how, and they don't, no one on the team gets to see that data. They don't get any of the individual metrics. All they get is this risk score. And then they decide, hey, if someone's really above, really not doing well, maybe we should test them twice. But really, they'd probably ask symptoms and follow whatever the medical protocols are with that team that day.
So only the team gets the risk score. The league does not get it.
No, incorrect. Actually,
Okay.
the team does not get the risk score.
Okay.
Because the team may be like, hey, man, if Kevin was higher than, I'm just making this up, right? Someone else on the Cavs, right? If I may not want to start him that day.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't want that happening, right? So the teams,
Yes.
the teams do not get that data. That data goes to the PA, the NBA PA, and the NBA because they're running all the testing procedures together in Orlando. And so then the NBA and NBA PA, they look at, hey, if someone's data is really high, they just call the medical staff and say, hey, you should check in with this player, ask how he's doing. And, hey, did we get him a test today or not? Okay, maybe we get him a test. Oh, maybe we should get a second test if it was negative, just to be safe. So that's how they're using it.
Okay, so there's an independent company associated, or maybe you guys have an independent team associated with just the risk factors, and these guys get put into, hey, so-and-so's in the red zone today, or so-and-so's in the yellow zone, so-and-so's in the green zone, whatever the hell it is. Let's call the team, inform them these guys on this list are on the risk factor list. And then you say, and that's how it goes. So the team doesn't get any of the data. The team just gets a call from someone that has nothing to do with the NBA per se, or the players union, whatever the hell.
Yep.
And they relay the information.
Correct. And actually they don't even really, I think, because they're doing so much inside, the bubble, like, man, they're doing everything you can think of, right? They have all different types of tests going on, right? And they have a saliva test going on, that's still in research with Yale, which is pretty awesome. What you can imagine that they were to call the team and say, hey, this player's in the yellow, this player's in the red, this player's in the green, that would affect things. So all they're doing is really just think about almost like of the 2,000 plus people, perhaps the top 1% that flagged the highest that day. And it doesn't mean that that person's sick. They actually looked at it from a population health perspective, not a threshold. So they're just saying, hey, every day we're going to look at perhaps the top 1% of people that seem to be higher that day than everyone else, right? And we'll just make sure someone talks to them at some point, make sure they check in how they're doing, check their temperature, and maybe if they haven't taken a test or they need to take a second test, they take one. That way, it's not like, hey, I'm comparing who's green versus red and should I start this guy or not. None of that data, and we felt it was super important, as did the PA, as did players' agents, to make sure the PA sees all of this and gets the information at the same time as anyone else because they're looking out for the player.
So do you guys have any data on asymptomatic people?
There is asymptomatic people in the research studies. One user who came out publicly, this guy in Finland, his name is Petri Holman. He made a Facebook post.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, he early in before lockdown, early March, he was traveling. He went to Austria for a ski trip, he had planned probably a year ago. 2 days later, he gets back home and all of a sudden his readiness score drops to 54. And he's like, dude, I feel fine. My ring said my temperature was up about a degree. doesn't seem that severe. And then he was like, you know what, let me go look up what was happening in Austria. Sure enough, there's an outbreak going on. Not big, but I think like 10 people had it. Again, this is early March. He's like, you know what, man, I should probably get tested. Calls up the health authorities, gets tested. He described himself as asymptomatic, and he was positive. So there are people like that in the data sets. I think both UCSF and West Virginia, as part of those studies, is trying to collect as much blood work as possible on as many people probably as possible, just to see, hey, who is asymptomatic or not. But from what, I think high level, what we're hearing is, and what we're hearing from users is, there's people who are asymptomatic that found out they tested positive.
And you guys haven't been able to detect in certain asymptomatic groups any deviation in sleep score or HRV score or anything like that.
Well, I mean, right now the research is still ongoing at both places, so I'm sure they're trying to figure that out, because that could be pretty cool. Anecdotally from users, we've heard that they don't have symptoms, but their data changes dramatically. Like this guy, Petri Holman, man, I think like, he's like some type of athlete or recreationally, but he happens to have like super high HRV, and he posted some of his normal data, but it was like way better than mine. Probably like average HRVs and like above 100 RMSSD, which is, pretty sick. So he basically was like, look, man, I didn't feel any worse. Like, and all of a sudden my HRV totally tanked. My temperature went up just 1.5 degrees, and my respiratory rate was slightly tweaked. Nothing crazy, but his readiness score, that main score in the app, was 54, and normally it's 80s or 90s. And so that was enough to go tell him to get a test. So we're assuming it's in there. The research isn't done. West Virginia University, the Rockefeller Neuroscience Group there, did put out a press release with early findings. And what they said in that press release, I believe, was, we're seeing changes in the data up to 3 days in advance of the onset of symptoms. That's what their early research is still indicating, and I think obviously, the research has to be done, and, they're doing a ton more. They're getting a lot more people, frontline healthcare workers and other first responders, wearing these Oura Rings. But, the early exciting stuff they saw, that seems exciting. And anecdotally, like you said, Mike, even in your own data, you saw a change a day before. I'm assuming most people, not everyone's going to be 3 days before. And, the devil will be in the details as the researchers figure that out. Like, hey, is it half the people 3 days before? Is it 20% of people the day of, and 20% of people 1 day before? I think everyone's eager to figure that out. But so far, it looks pretty promising.
Right on.
Fantastic.
Brooker, you got anything?
I mean, just a little quick one. I know you need to run, Harpreet. What's the time schedule between all of these testing and then what you're able to actually implement into your own system? I mean, what is that? Is that a year out, 6 months, 2 years? What is that?
Man, it's a good question. I think these research studies will probably go, until the fall, and maybe they extend them. I think they have different dates posted on like when you enrolled, when the study ends, and I think they're both sometime around the fall. But I wouldn't be surprised if, given COVID is what it is right now, still increasing in the U.S., that might go further out. But we are working with them. We're waiting for them to find the findings and then use what we can from that research to put into our product. Luckily, I would say, like, we see this every flu and cold season, right? We already have, like, I had H1N1 confirmed version of the flu last year, right? My readiness score went to crap, just like, Mike. So it's already in the product today. Can we make it better? We think so. Can it be especially helpful to users during a pandemic? We think so. Can it help the NBA? Man, we sure hope so, right? Because I think not just that it's the NBA, what's so cool here is they're one of the first organizations just to open up back to work. If they do this well and they figure it out, that's going to inform so many other sports leagues. It's going to inform so many other companies and organizations. And that's what I love about sports, man. It gives people hope. I think right now it's a different level of hope. It's not just my team winning, man. The New Jersey Nets going to pull it off against the Pistons in the playoffs, like they did a long, long time ago, or didn't, sorry, but almost did, right? I think here it's like, man, this is hope on how the world can get back to work, right? It's a bigger stage now than it's ever been. So I think that's why we're really excited to see how it goes, and hopefully we can be part of the solution.
Right on. One last question for me, and then we'll let you go. real-time heart rate. What is the delay on real-time heart rate? Obviously when you wear one of the polar monitors, it's probably like 10, 15-second delay on it, delayed response. How can you guys get real-time heart rate developed in the ring, and what would the delay be like?
Yeah, that's actually a good one. Optics, the way all these wearables work, right, is, and it's best when people are still. When you start moving, running, lifting, doing calisthenics, box jumps, that light is moving around and quite a bit. So it's never going to be as accurate as a chest rep, right, like a polar would be. That's actually why we started to focus on sleep first. And even like meditation now, we have that mode where you can check your HRV. If you do a 5-minute meditation session, you'll see your graph, so you can see how you're doing. So you hit the plus button, you click moment. That's where it is in the app. So you can do it in the product. Trying to do it for a training application, we feel like the data still needs to be improved, and we need to collect more of it to put something out there into the world where we feel it's accurate. We published, the abstract got accepted into Sleep, the medical journal, and then the full paper got accepted in the IOP. And you can see that our HRV overnight are 99 and 98% correlated to EKG. If you look at stuff for any wearable application during movement, I think it's like running, walking is probably the best. Cycling is probably next. Lifting weights and looking at that is, up to 30% plus type errors depending on the device. And so we always felt like, man, if you're going to rely on this data to make a decision on how you train, you want to make sure that data is pretty damn good. Mm-hmm. And until we collect more data, until we feel more confident that A, we can be really beneficial to the consumer, and B, frankly, shine more, than other wearables, we felt like, we don't want to put something out into the world that people could misuse or not make the best decisions on. So we're working on it. I think you'll see more from us coming. I know it's not as fast as I want. It's not as fast as our team wants. It's not as fast as our users want, but we also have a certain rigor and quality that we want to make sure before we put it out into the world. And I think the latest research, Stanford had some stuff. I think Apple Watch is the best, and Fitbit's probably the second best at this, or Garmin's probably up there too. Running and walking, you can get pretty good. It's this weird thing when it's a cyclical movement, you can actually pull out the optic changes, based on that movement pattern because it's repetitive. And you can be like, oh no, this is what a heart rate looks like in that pulse waveform when you're moving back and forth with your arms and you're running, right? And so cyclical movements, running, walking, cycling, I think they've gone up to like 90% type accuracy, right? Lifting weights, if you take your Apple Watch and you wear a Polar, you do 10 jumping jacks, 10 box jumps, 5 deadlifts, like that thing is going to be, I would say more than 10% error. I haven't done it myself. And every individual will be slightly different. So I think, we wanted to make sure when we started to put that data out there that we felt like we can be a notch above and frankly be useful to the consumer. And right now we're not there yet.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's essentially, even with all this stuff, there's a measurement, but then there's also that window for error where it's just kind of like a guesstimate.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, so for us, that's why, during nighttime heart rate, we're able to see every beat. And we actually send on every single beat, and it's called IBI, interbeat interval, the space in between each beat, mm-hmm. how you calculate HRV. We're able to detect each one of those. Because the other wrist-based wearables, right, that signal is so much lower, they have to sample at a lower frequency. But a lot of them, what Fitbit and Apple does, you can even see it. You can just see it. The green light blinks for a couple mm-hmm. seconds, and then it doesn't blink. Hey guys, when it's not blinking, it's not measuring your heart rate, mm-hmm. right? But you look in that graph, they'll still show you like, hey, no, this is your heart rate, right? And I think it's like the dirty secret in wearables that, frankly, one of the reason, again, why the researchers are choosing to use our data sets, because we present all that data. Even our HRV data overnight, there's probably like, 1 or 2% of beats that we think, we didn't measure correctly. And we even pass that low level data on to researchers, which other wearables don't. Apple, to researchers will only let you pull every 5th heartbeat. They don't even give you in the raw data to a research organization.
So how the hell do they give you proper EKG measurements?
Well, what they do, EKG is different. They have an EKG sensor that's separate. But that only happens when you actually hold that sensor for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it is, which most people don't do. Only if you have AFib, are you probably checking that all the time.
Gotcha.
But the actual heart rate data, what all these companies do, especially because based on the risk, because you don't have enough power, is you measure for 30 seconds, you probably extrapolate for a couple minutes. And everyone does it sort of differently. They sample differently and extrapolate differently. In workout mode, everyone knows that, hey, you have to sample all the time. So they go from, at rest, most of those devices, man, they're like 1 to 5 hertz at rest measuring your heart rate. Or maybe 6 now, I think. I forget where some of them are at. When they see workout mode, they shoot up to 50, 60 hertz, but they can only do that for a short amount of time before the battery dies. But the problem is, even when you're working out, even if you're sampling high, even like us, if we're sampling at 250 hertz, there's still so much movement and signal that data distorts it. And you have to do a lot of estimation and extrapolation. And because of that, we felt like right now our focus, you got to focus as a startup. Eventually we'll get there and we'll put something out into the world we feel like we can stand behind. But right now we need more people, more data, to make sure we put something out there that's going to be world class.
Harpreet, mate, because of this guesstimate that you were saying, sorry, I know you got to go, so also feel free to knock this question off, right?
No,
but the one question I got for you right now is, you guys are obviously so good at sleep data. That was the thing you first focused on, and it's what you're doing very, very well in. Why not just focus on sleep? Why try to go into all this other stuff and, make your life so complicated? Why not just be the kings in sleep?
I mean, frankly, that's what we focused on, like you said, because we think that data is the most accurate, reliable, and perhaps the most meaningful, right, for your training the next day. However, I think, as you actually brought up before, Brooker, was like, well, what if I need to understand why my data is changing based on what I did, right? So we need to know, we want to understand if you did deadlifts versus a Peloton workout, that information can be helpful to us and the user in understanding, hey, why is my data changing? And so I think, that's why things like understanding eventually, someday, like your diet, and timing of food, right? And what type of food, right? Or meditation, so these things can be useful in understanding your sleep data. It can give us more context in your recovery data. So, that's how we're trying to approach it first. But I agree. I think, from what we've seen so far, that data for an elite level athlete to really rely on for when you're working out, just use a chest strap. The other devices, including ourselves, we're not there yet. So if you really want to rely on heart rate data and make professional level athlete decision making, and coaching decisions off this, the wearable industry is not there yet. It does look like running and cycling are ahead, in terms of applications where the accuracy gets better and better. But I would say it comes down to accuracy versus convenience. Most athletes do not want to wear a chest strap, right? And most people every night, I sure as hell don't want to be layered up to 32 wires, right, to get my sleep data as accurate as you can. So, we put out a product into the world we thought meets that threshold of accuracy and convenience with a ring. And that's why it's not, a wrist watch, because we think it's more accurate. But for applications like activity, it still may not be good enough to make those kind of decisions. So, we still have to collect more data and really understand if we can make a difference there or not. But I do think understanding the context, knowing what you did is helpful for the user too, and can help them make better health decisions. I do really got to jet. I know this,
bro. Thank you so much. We kept you longer than we wanted to. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
I wish I could hang out here all day, man. This is like some of the most fun stuff, right? It's talking to people who are examining the stuff, doing the homework, and using it for good. So,
right on, bro. Get the hell
Thanks,
off.
Harpreet.
We appreciate you,
buddy.
Check out Oura Ring, guys.
All right.
Good luck, man. Good luck with everything.
It.
Ciao, bro.
Peace. Bye.